the informed investor, thanks to Century 21. Smarter, bolder, faster. Go to century21.com.au.
The chairman of Century 21 is Charles Tarbey. He's on the move tonight, so he's on the line. Evening to you.
I am on the move tonight, Steve. Yeah, good. Thank you very much. I've been listening to you, though. I've been in the car, so I've been listening to you and Andrew for a little while earlier today. So
yeah, we talked a bit of budget, but was there? I mean, there's always changes in the budget that affect property investment. Did you see anything that caused you any concern, given that the opposition and Bill Shorten, if he were to be elected as our next Prime Minister, and if you believe the polls today, Charles Labor's still in a box seat to win, that he'll chuck out negative gearing?
There weren't any really dramatic changes other than for the positive, I think, Steve, because the biggest windfalls for real estate around the country was that taxes relating to investment property, remain pretty much unchanged. And I know that the Real Estate Institute of Australia were very happy and applauded the government for that sort of forward thinking. It's been a big concern also with negative gearing and capital gains tax. There seem to be so many taxes out there, but because of the negative gearing policies proposed by the Labor Party out there, it was great that it was just left alone, because there is a great deal of concern that with negative gearing, it could cause an issue for renters if you knock the investors out of the marketplace.
What is your feeling on that? I mean, is that over exaggerated? I mean,
I think it has been rorted. It's a terrible word to say, but I think it's been probably abused. Let me put it that way, more than rorted, in the sense that the system is there. It's allowed people to do certain things around their investment properties. I think people have taken probably advantage of it and gone beyond where they should have. I do think, and I know we've spoken about this, to me, negative gearing is a business. It's no different than any other business. You buy a business or you buy a property, you put tenants in there, those tenants pay you rent. You've got costs against that property, you've got your interest payments, you've got your rates, your taxes, etc. So it offsets. And a lot of businesses, as you know, out there, you find that the owners will make a living, but at the end of the day, when the financials are produced, there's no profit. That's not an uncommon thing with many businesses.
You think that a lot of people would get out of the property market if negative gearing was substantially changed. But, yeah, I mean, the point about this is that, to be fair to Shorten and Labor, they say that everything that's currently in place is, I think this is my correct understanding of this, would be grandfathered, so it'll only be on properties bought in the future.
Yeah, and that's the other issue. The other issue is now all of a sudden, those sort of policies look good on paper, but when you look into the future and you've got a property that's grandfathered, and then another person who's bought one has got one that isn't grandfathered, then all of a sudden you have two different property sectors out there right now, and those people that have got property that's grandfathered, they are never going to sell it, and so you're going to change the way in which property turns over. And that could be an issue in itself. Look, I believe that people need to be taxed, and I think what really genuinely does happen down the track, there's a capital gains tax if you sell. There's a stamp duty tax when you go in, if you like. There's a land tax for a holding property. I think that investors provide a significant amount of opportunity for state governments to, especially in terms of stamp duty, etc., and land tax, to build up a significant amount of revenue. And so I just don't know why you want to touch the housing, because it frightens me with housing. I remember talking about the fact that we were going to be 180,000 properties short by 2020 if we didn't get construction underway in Australia. Now you're hearing that we're going to be 600,000 properties short in years to come if the housing industry isn't incentivised. Now the Labor government is saying, hey, well, we'll let you buy property. New property, a negative gear, that should stimulate the building industry, but new property then becomes old property. And I think after a period of time, when you have too many variations in a single platform, being the housing industry, it becomes incredibly difficult then to administer it.
Given interest rates haven't changed for a couple of years now, haven't gone up, and wages are not moving, why is it that that rents are able to increase for people who are tenants who are listening to us? Is that because of availability?
That is availability, and there's an upside there. There's a significant upside, and that is that a lot of the properties that have been sitting out there off the plan, that are coming off the construction line right now, are going to be available. And we're talking, I know there in the next 24 months, from RP Data's information, there are over 42,000 properties coming onto the market from off the plan in certain markets in Australia. Like, it's literally thousands upon thousands of properties. Now, many of those are being bought by investors, Steve. So you're going to find a situation where all of a sudden, like, I pick Hobart as an example. A lot of people have gone down to Tassie because the prices are so cheap. So now you've got a significant number of investors. Now, when those properties are all finished, well, who are you going to get to live in them if there's no jobs available? So that is going to create a correction. And I'm already seeing a correction in the housing market in terms of rents in Hobart. I've been watching that declining in terms of rental value. I've watched in Perth how the rental values have declined significantly in Perth, to the point where some landlords are giving a couple of months free to get people to rent properties off them. So the tide is turning in favour of tenants.
But rents in popular areas in places like Melbourne and Sydney are going up.
They are going up, but as these properties start to come onto the marketplace, there's going to be a lot more competition. And I'm noticing again in my charts when I look at the rental market across the country that there is a change occurring in a downward trend. And I think that, personally, from my perspective, I would rather buy than rent, but some people would prefer to rent. And if I look at the rental market overall, it's been declining, particularly over the last few weeks. There's a change. I keep a track on it every single week. And I look at the Brisbane market, that's on a downward trend. If I look at the Sydney market, that's now currently on a downward trend. The only place that's had any real positive growth in the last few weeks is actually Perth, strangely enough. And that's probably because they'd had such a massive decline to start with.
I was in Canberra at the weekend, and I went out into the broader Canberra rather than just in the parliamentary circle. I was out at a place called Fishwick on Saturday morning at the fresh market there. I mean, there's so many people out there. That's a great community. There
is, and I have to tell you, Canberra pipped the post. It won everything this last week. I mean, the Sydney auction clearance rates came in at 62.5% with 767 auctions, and Melbourne with 1,090 auctions came in at 61.2%, but Canberra came in at 77.1% clearance rate, and it was the only capital city in Australia that had a higher clearance rate than this time last year. Every other capital city was below or well below this time last year.
Yeah, people who've invested in Canberra real estate have actually done extremely well. Charles, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you, my friend. We'll talk to you in the studio next week.
Thank you very much.
Charles Tarbey is the chairman of Century 21. I was just staggered at the number of people in that part of Canberra that I was on Saturday morning. It was just fantastic. Saturday morning was